Set yourselves up, dear listeners, as we dive into 3 chilling stories of Craigslist experiences that turned out badly. These stories will make you reconsider the honest posts and the people behind them. Turn down the lights and brace yourselves for a frightening journey into the unexplored world. Story 1. The Roommate from Hell. Jessica was a young lady in her 20s, searching for another flatmate to assist with covering the lease of her apartment. She went to Craigslist and found an ad posted by a man named Mark. He appeared to be respectful and polite, and after a concise meeting, Jessica chose to allow him to move in. From the get-go, everything appeared to be ordinary. Mark hushed up, paid his lease on time, and generally minded his own business. In any case, soon, strange things began occurring. Jessica would awaken to find things in her apartment moved or missing. She excused it as her creative mind or basic neglect. Nonetheless, one evening she heard delicate murmurs coming from Mark's room. Interest got the better of her, and she discreetly moved toward the door. The murmurs became stronger, more mad, and abruptly, they halted. Jessica rushed back to her room, her heart pounding. The following morning, Mark went about as though nothing had occurred. Jessica chose to examine further and found upsetting drawings and images concealed in his room. Panicked, she defied him, but he ignored it, calling it craftsmanship. Jessica didn't really accept him and decided to do a background check. What she found frightened her. Mark had a past filled with psychological sickness and viciousness. That evening, she locked her room door, but it wasn't sufficient. She woke to find Mark standing over her, an evil smile on his face. Jessica figured out how to get away and call the police, who arrested Mark. She later figured out that he had wanted to hurt her, and she was lucky to have gotten away with her life. Jessica moved out right away, promising at no point ever to trust an outsider from Craigslist in the future. Story 2. The Free Couch. David was moving to another city and chose to dispose of his old couch. He posted an ad on Craigslist, offering it for free to any individual who could get it. Within minutes, he receives a message from a man named Tim. They organized a time, and Tim showed up quickly, a friendly smile on his face. David assisted him with stacking the sofa into his van, and Tim offered to buy him a drink as thanks. David, feeling liberal, acknowledged. They went to a nearby bar, where Tim appeared to be really keen on David's turn and new job. They talked and giggled, and David felt calm, accepting he'd made another companion. At the point when the time had come to leave, Tim demanded driving David home. Trusting his new colleague, David agreed, ignorant that this basic thoughtful gesture would before long go off in a dark and strange direction. As they drove, the friendly environment started to shift, uncovering Tim's vile expectations. Tim uncovered that he had no intention of simply giving David a ride. He needed something else. David's heart hustled as he understood the risk he was in. He tried to keep quiet and talked his way out, claiming he needed to use the washroom. Tim hesitantly consented to stop at a corner store. When the van halted, David shot, running into the store and yelling for help. Tim dashed off, and David at absolutely no point ever saw him in the future. David reported the incident to the police, but Tim was never caught. The experience left David shaken, and he took in a cruel example about the expected risks of meeting outsiders through Craigslist. Story 3. The Haunted Antique. Samantha cherished collecting antiques and frequently scoured Craigslist for special finds. At some point, she coincidentally found an ad for an old, lavish mirror being sold at an incredibly low cost. Captivated, she reached the vendor, an old lady named Mrs. Thompson. At the point when Samantha showed up at her home, Mrs. Thompson appeared to be anxious to dispose of the mirror. She claimed it had a dark history, and that bizarre things happened whenever it was in the house. The mirror was wonderful, with an intricate golden frame and a practically mesmerizing quality to its glass. In spite of Mrs. Thompson's alerts about its ghostly past, Samantha couldn't avoid its allure. She stacked it into her car, her brain humming with excitement and curiosity. As she drove home, she was unable to shake the inclination that the mirror was watching her. That evening, odd events started. Shadows moved freely, murmurs occupied her room, and the temperature dove. Samantha acknowledged she could have brought back home something beyond a collectible. Samantha excused the alerts as superstition and brought the mirror home. That evening, she hung it in her living room, admiring its magnificence. In any case, soon, odd things started to occur. She heard murmurs and strides when nobody was near. Objects continued all alone, and she frequently felt a frigid chill when she looked into the mirror. One night, she awakened to find her appearance smiling at her, despite the fact that she was vacuous. The experience was disrupting. Her reflection's eyes appeared to be hazier, loaded up with a malicious glimmer. She scoured her eyes, thinking it was a fantasy, however the evil grin remained. Alarm flooded through her as she moved in an opposite direction from the mirror. Frantically, she covered it with a cloth, wanting to stop the unpleasant events. In any case, the murmurs developed stronger, repeating her name. Samantha realized that the mirror's dark history was not a simple notion. It had brought something evil into her home. Terrified, Samantha reached Mrs. Thompson, who hesitantly recounted to her the mirror's story. It had belonged to a notorious occultist who used it in dark customs. Mrs. Thompson instructed her to get rid of it right away. Samantha chose to return the mirror, but when she arrived at Mrs. Thompson's home, she thought, was deserted and barricaded. Frantic, she threw the mirror into a nearby river, expecting to be freed of its revile. For some time, the aggravations halted, and Samantha thought she was protected. But one evening, she woke to find the mirror back on her wall. The glass broke and spread with something dark. Her appearance gazed back at her with noxious eyes, and she realized she could never get away from the mirror's curse. These stories help us to remember the risks sneaking behind apparently guiltless Craigslist advertisements. They obscure the line between the known and the unknown, the seen and the unseen. Remember these stories and the chilling truth they uncover as you switch out the lights this evening. Sometimes the things we can't see are the most frightening.